Hi, I'm Celia, founder of LTR Coaching, and I'd like to welcome you to the Inspired Triathletes podcast, where I'll be bringing you stories from female triathletes and taking on topics that are important to women in the sport. Hello and welcome to today's episode. Today I'm here with Mel Berry. Welcome to you. And Mel, in 2018, co-funded Her Spirit with Holly Woodford, which was to make health and fitness and good nutrition accessible to all women. I followed your journey with Her Spirit, and I really liked what you were doing, in encouraging all women to just be active and embrace movement in whatever way they could, really. And then this year, in 2025, you've launched the Women's Sports Store, which I'm going to read out what you've written here. The antidote to all the inaccessible and unreliable experiences women face when shopping for sports gear, from kit design to fit real women to nutrition that truly nourishes. The platform connects consumers with brands that understand how women want to feel when they run, swim, cycle, hike and play. So that's great. You've branched off into something different. And how's it going so far?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's lovely to have a conversation with a fellow female coach, and obviously kind of passionate about the triathlon world. And how's it going? Women's Sports Store is very much in its early days. What we found out in the survey that we did about 4 months ago, when we asked women what stops them from being active, and guess what? Product comes up. I don't know where to get it. I don't know who to trust. I can't afford it. And so for us, that survey of over 1,000 women meant that we had clarity to understand that if you created a website, a platform, which obviously womensportstore.com is, that a woman can go and look at a review that is reviewed by someone like us, somebody that day in, day out, obviously does what they love and shows you what to do, how to do it. And we're all price sensitive in the world that we live in. So a vast percentage of those products have a great offer on. So if you're looking to be able to get something that might be a few pounds kind of cheaper, that's a really important thing to be able to do. But what we want to do is enable women to not have to be debilitated by one person says this and one person says that. They can just get straight to the product, and they can thrive because they've got something that makes them feel invincible, rather than doesn't make them feel as if it's something that works for them. So yeah, it's definitely been a good journey over last month.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think with women's clothing and sports and anything like that, there's this kind of like underground kind of, you find out from this person and on this website, and it's not always that easy to find that information. So that's great. You've got it all collated in one place, and it's reliable like that. And as you said, you come from a triathlon background. So what was it that originally sparked your passion for triathlon?
Yeah, and I love this question. It definitely made me go back into my memory banks, and it made me smile. So in the mid-90s, so 1996, so I'm sure there are people listening to this that weren't even born during that time. So I'm a wise woman of the triathlon world. I lived in Dubai, and Dubai was a very, very different world to the world that it is now. Many people will see it through the T100 lens. It definitely wasn't like that during kind of my time, and had a wonderful friend that I got to know, a guy called Bruce Smart. And Bruce was definitely, a evangelist when it comes to triathlon. He's like, right, going to bring triathlon to Dubai. So him and a couple of other guys said, right, let's set up an event. I was a swimmer. I didn't really, understand that much about triathlon. I definitely didn't run. Most swimmers don't like land. So migrating to land was one of many kind of challenges. But I did my first triathlon. It was a sea swim. The waters of Dubai are beautiful and clean and warm, which is really important for me. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed being able to take the skill that I had from a swimming point of view, and then be able to still be that person that could be at the front of the pack. That was always, a great thing. But then looking at obviously the two disciplines, and I think my early stage experience where all those runners ran past me and said, keep going, that has definitely, kind of stayed with me till that time. But it takes a long time for them to catch me, but it was fun. I loved it, really did.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how old would you have been then, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, gosh. So back in 1996, so I'm now 56. So 96,
Okay.
I was in my mid-20s. And,
Right, okay.
those were the days where, you look at some of the people that, I guess it was the Spencer Smith, Simon Lessing, Annie Emerson.
Yeah.
It was that kind of, heyday for those that weren't and aren't aware. 2000 was the first Olympics to have triathlon. And that was obviously a time that, I was working for Speedo International in kind of 2000. So it was a great time to, to then be kind of part of that. So yes, I'm only 21 really, but unfortunately 21 times 2 and a bit.
Yeah. And are you still racing now, or?
I haven't done a triathlon for probably the last, I think, 3-4 years. And the reason for that is I fell out of love with the sport a little bit. The last one I did was Marrakesh half Ironman, and I did that with my wonderful partner in crime, Holly Woodford, and loved it because you were in a very different world than you are in most European events. Your bike got piled on the back of some truck that you hoped would get to the start. It was a end-to-end event, so you ended up in the middle of kind of Marrakesh, where it was not a given that you would have closed roads and or not have to then stop for the traffic lights when you were kind of running. But it was great. I'm a expat kid. I was born in India, lived in Malta, and lived in the Middle East. So I love that frenzy that different parts of the world have. And the reason for not carrying on, after that is I then started to have what I now know was the early stages of needing a hip replacement, and it meant that I couldn't run. So I had a hip replacement 2 years ago, and in the 2 years leading up to that, it was a challenge to be able to run. And the thing that kept me doing multi-sport was a crazy challenge that myself and Holly did when we were raising money at her spirit called Lakes to London. And Lakes to London, in essence, was a triathlon. So, I've added another year onto how long ago it was. But the concept was that 3 of us, including Sarah Williams, who still works as a regional development manager at British Triathlon, we would swim 5 kilometres in Lake Windermere. And that was my happy place. It was great. And then we cycled from Windermere. So we set off from Felford at the south part of Windermere. And over 2 days, we cycled to central London. And we had some other riders we had some other riders that helped us be, in essence, a bit of a peloton, which definitely helped. We got to London, I think it was about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, which is always interesting when people are piling out of the pubs having had a few too many drinks, and you've been cycling for X amount of miles. And then it was capped off with running the London Marathon. What we were trying to prove and show is that you can achieve anything that you want to. We're 3 ordinary women, but look, multi-sport is still something, and triathlon is still something very much in my heart and soul. Like you, I still coach, and I've just recently put a lot of the knowledge that I have together in MelBerry Coaching. So again, how do you empower women to take on events and challenges that they never thought possible? And my body loves doing the 3 disciplines. I just don't stick it together doing many races anymore.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I think there's a really high value in being adaptable and being able to say, actually, that's not working for me at the moment. It's not to say it's never going to work for you again, but you make a different choice, because some people can't let go of that, and they do end up in a bit of a mess then. Just trying to keep doing it, and their heart's not in it because they don't know anything different. So it's really great to adapt, and I think it's a valuable skill for all of us to have, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I was the chair at the Triathlon Industry Association for 4 years, and I think one of the things that I've definitely seen, and I would say it's not a positive about the sport, is the cost, because event entries have significantly gone up. And I know that event organisers have had to make that happen because, again, road closures cost a lot more money, and a few other things in there. And, I think the conversations like this, well, how do we make sure that we can still make the sport accessible for all? And that was so much of what we did at Her Spirit, is how do you create opportunities? Well, an opportunity to take part in a triathlon or a swim, bike, run event doesn't have to necessarily be events. We built digital challenges. So you could go and do your digital challenge for the week, which is one day going for a swim, one day going for a run, and, following it up that kind of day. And I think the important thing for anybody listening here is, let's innovate. How do we make the sport still accessible? And accessibility is access to a venue, access to product. And that goes back to everything that we're trying to do with Women's Sports Store, because, it's a costly sport, but it can be a very easy sport to enter. So, you don't need to have everything. Just as long as you've got something, and that something is you can go a long way with it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, with races, there's varying costs depending on what race you enter, and there's a lot of local, smaller races that are a bit more cost effective than something like doing Ironman that is a massive cost, isn't it? My husband did his first one last year, and he was like, "Oh, I spent so much money on nutrition and everything. It's like a huge investment, but it's an amazing experience. But it would put a lot of people off. So yeah, we need those smaller races and different ways of challenging ourselves, for sure. Yeah, and people got quite creative with that, didn't you? I think in Her Spirit, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and it's back to my point is, you don't have to be that person that stands on a start line to be a triathlete. And I remember one of our wonderful community members and friends, Sally B. Sally B was always worried about the cutoff. Sally B was, worried about many things, and we have seen over those years that has been a real challenge for women, that worrying about such things as cutoffs and toilets and period products and everything on that side. And what Sally B did was great. She made her own try. So she went for a swim in Dorney. She had a bike waiting for her, and she went and did some laps around Dorney Lake. And then I think she might have cycled home, and then from home she went and ran. And what that showed her was the distances of, obviously, an Olympic distance was something she could do. And that got her thinking, okay, so if I can do the distances, can I find an event that then means that they either don't have cut-off times, or they're cut-off times that, are very kind of achievable? And I think, one of the criticisms I'll have for triathlon is we become very focused on the front end, but we don't understand, the mass participation side well enough. And people like Sally are competent enough and are great and very kind of athletic. So from a female point of view, how do we make sure, and we in the past before have challenged event organisers to again make that more accessible? Because I think many triathletes and many triathlon clubs don't really understand people that aren't within their kind of DNA. But if we are to grow the sport, we have to think differently, and we have to look at different opportunities. And that's the art of collaboration, because you might be doing something different than you've done in the past before. And that's okay, because that's, the essence of growth, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that I learned when I was doing a lot of sport, and possibly you might be quite similar in this way, that you come up through the sport and you're like confident because you've got a sporting background, so you don't necessarily see those challenges that other women might have, because you don't realize what it's like to be like that until you put yourself in that person's shoes and think, hang on a minute, I feel fine doing this, so why shouldn't everybody? And it's like, well, hang on a minute, you had a completely different attitude to sport growing up. It was kind of easy, and I didn't feel like I was out of place in that space or anything like that. I was very confident, and I wanted to help other women to feel like that as well, and understand why they didn't, because you see how much you get from doing those events and how much your confidence increases, and just life skills, amazing life skills that you can learn from doing sport. And everyone should have access to that, really. There shouldn't be barriers in place for people to get involved in that.
Yeah, and I think that life growth is a really important one to talk about, because, I've seen, whether or not it's through the years of Her Spirit or the coaching that I've done, it's about confidence, because confidence is about enabling you to unlock the door to possibilities. And when you then go and achieve things that you never thought possible, you go, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It wasn't as hard as I thought I was, and I didn't think I was going to achieve it. So I'm now going to go and do this. And once you understand the art of possible is so much greater than you ever thought, you look at the way that you live. So you think, I'm not going to put up with what's happened to me from a work point of view, and I am going to challenge that. And that elixir of life is confidence, and that confidence piece is so brilliant. And we've seen, and we saw so many women at Her Spirit. One then was a lawyer, and she said, I don't want to work in this industry, so I'm going to go and be a freelance kind of lawyer, and I want to then be able to not be confined by the world that we are. And I think, it's about togetherness. So how do we lift each other up? And I think that's why these conversations are so vitally important. And don't just presume. Far too often we presume because we look through our own lens. Well, what about the lens of somebody who is less competent or less fortunate or less capable? We have a lot to pass on to those people by just being kind. I think, it's that. And I always laugh in the kind of triathlon kind of world as a swimmer, is again, you become, so many triathletes become so kind of fixated in the way, and back to that point that we had earlier. And let's encourage and enthuse more women to do the event. And one of the the conversations that I'm really keen to have with you is coaching. We've seen a decline in female coaches over the coming years. Why is that the case? You and I are coaches in our own right. And I don't know what you see as a fellow female coach, why you don't see more female coaches in the sport of triathlon.
I don't really know. I mean, I had to look at my own stuff a little bit then. Like because when I set up as a coach, I was thinking, well, why don't they don't necessarily want a female coach. Like, women don't always want a female coach. And I did speak to someone, and she said, well, I don't know if I'd trust another woman because because we were kind of in the same area as well. She thought there might be competition between us or something. And it's like, well, I'm not like going to coach you badly because I don't want you to do well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's not my job. I'm not like competitive like that. I sort of think that says more about her really than me. But it's really interesting to sort of look at it and think, Why is it that, you know, women might trust a man or think that a man knows more than a female coach? I mean, I coach in a completely different way, and it's my coaching has changed a lot over the years, and especially since just coaching women as well. You just have a completely different perspective, because I when I did coach men, it was all about data and numbers and like, which I like as well. I'm quite into that, but you know, it's just a different thing. How about you? How do you find?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Over probably the last 10 years, I found that I either get 20-year-old men
Right.
or predominantly women. And why is that? I think that ordinarily those 20-year-old men were on their journey to do their first Ironman or first
Yeah.
half Ironman, and they probably were a little bit more emotionally open and aware. So again, a woman,
Yeah.
I think also that relationships are really, really, really important. I'm so passionate that I think in the embryonic stages of coaching, it's around that trust and that
Mm,
competency piece. Yes, data has a very, very, very important role to play. And we partner with Training Peaks, and Training Peaks has got great, obviously, data in there to enable you to kind of look at your TSS scores and everything on there. But it's about coaching the person in front of you, and it's not about a given formula. And it's understanding flexibility, vulnerability. And for me, you know, my coaching philosophy is very much around that open and honest part. Because
yeah.
if you don't tell me how you feel, or you don't tell me something, then it's very hard for me to be able to do the job that I do. And they are quite deep, those kind of relationships,
Yeah.
aren't they? Because people then will tell you things that ordinarily they don't tell many people. But for me, coaching is brilliant because it enables that person to succeed in a way that they didn't. And I'm sure, like you feel as if you've had a small role to play in that person's success.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And sometimes you don't see how much of an impact you might be having. But then you think about it and you think, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. Did, I am doing a good job here, and I am helping this person move through whatever they're moving through. Because a lot of the time as well, I find people come to triathlon and they are going through things, and
Mm,
they're using triathlon as a sort of vehicle to process or go through some kind of life change or bereavement or birth of a child, anything, it could be a whole spectrum of stuff that people are dealing with. And I think it's quite a good sport for that, because although it sort of stops you thinking about things a little bit because you've got something to focus on, but also gives you space to process stuff, because you're
mm,
out on those long rides and runs and you're thinking, and you're also dealing with failure, sort of comparing yourself to other people. Like for me, it was trying to do as well as I could, and still not getting any attention from my dad.
mm.
It's like those kind of things, they come up and you're like, oh my God, I'm still thinking that. And so you deal with such a lot of emotional stuff, I think. Going, well, you can do that's my experience.
Yeah, and the point that you say about comparison, and we always talk about comparison as the thief of joy. So why
Mm,
compare yourself to somebody else, and why compare yourself to your former self? And
yeah.
I've definitely done that, over the decades. And as I mentioned, I'm a woman in my 50s now. And if I look back, and I guess for context, and this is about me, this is only about my, is when I was swimming, I was a 400-meter, freestyle swimmer. So I was a endurance essence swimmer, and I
Mm,
could swim a 415, 420, 400 meters.
mm,
Now I can't get anywhere near there. If I swim a 5.5 to 6 minute 400, I'm over the moon and pretty ecstatic.
mm,
So if I compare myself to my past self, I will be downtrodden and going, I can't believe, I'm over a minute slower than I was, sometimes 2 minutes slower for whatever reason. But I'm still able to do, what I'm able to do. And 2 years ago, swam the length of Windermere and loved it. It was about being able to do something that, 11 and a half miles was the longest swim that, I'd ever done. I was looking at and how I trained differently. I'm, like you, very fortunate that I've got a lot of, very knowledgeable people in my life and, helping with the support of Paul Newsom. So from Swim Smooth, again, getting to kind of understand that endurance swimming. And this year, I went and swam Lake Coniston and Ullswater as part of the Chill Swim series. I hadn't done enough training because I was coaching and I was trying to train for a 50K ultra, a year and a half post hip replacement to show women that you can go back to doing that kind of activity. I did Coniston and I was nowhere near as fast as I was, when I was training for Windermere, and I was just like, I can't believe it was that slow. But I had to then be able to frame it. And it did take me a bit of time to kind of frame that kind of piece to say, okay, when I was swimming for Windermere, I was swimming 3 or 4 times a week. It was a very singular focused event. I did this and, I was probably doing 3 hours of swimming if I was lucky. And then through general FOMO and predominantly through the swimmers that I was coaching, I ended up doing Ullswater. And I was like, wow, it's only 2.5 miles kind of longer. And anybody that's done any longer swimming events, 2.5 miles is not a short kind of distance. No. So when I got to mile 5 and my rotator cuff was kind of burning and I was just thinking, oh my God, where's the end? I just had to stop and think about being present and stopping and going, do you know what? I'm not going to do it in the time that I thought I was, because I haven't fundamentally done the training. And that's okay. So stop every mile and look at, the amazing landscape of, in Ullswater. Have a conversation with the kayaker, have a conversation, with the people that are on the kind of the feed boats and get to the end. And I think, the piece, and you obviously talked about how triathlon can be used for escapism. And there is so many different kind of ways of escapism. And I think that for me, going back to, good old comparison is the thief of joy. I did it. I loved it. Was I as fast as I wanted to be? No, but that's okay, because I got to do something that was beautiful. I don't know where's the lake. I know that's definitely
that's North Wales. Yeah, okay. That's North Wales. Yeah, I've forgotten the name of it. It's near Brennan.
Okay. Yep.
It's not very big compared to Windermere.
Yeah, that. But it's still a beautiful kind of place.
Looking around. Yeah, I think and that's something that you can bring in is the love of. I think as we get older, it does get difficult because you're like, oh, I'm not going to be as fast. Or you can still improve quite a lot, but it just depends where you've been, and if you've started from nothing and you start training later, then you're going to improve. But if you've been at a high standard earlier, then you're not necessarily going to get back to that. And as you say, it doesn't matter. And probably like your 20-year-old self wouldn't have been able to do that massive long swim. I don't know.
I think I would have kicked and screamed my way through, but my open water swimming journey was one that started probably about 10 years ago, and through the group that I had, which were friends at the Triathlon Club, we decided to do Chill Swim Coniston. And I hadn't really done that much kind of open water swimming. I was definitely a warmer weather open water swimmer. I think most triathletes are. I always kind of laugh now where you kind of look back at where you used to be, that when it comes to September and it's below 20 degrees, the triathletes are, I'm not getting in there, it's far too cold. And, we went on a journey. I think there was 5 of us to then be able to try and swim, the Chill Swim, Coniston Swim. And I think I got to about 3 miles, maybe 4 miles, and I had hypothermia, and I just really, my body started to shut down, got chucked in the back of the St. John's ambulance, and I didn't understand what my body needed to do to then be able to kind of be in that environment. Take that, I think, 4 or 5 years kind of forward. And again, I'd had a lot more kind of exposure to open water swimming. I'd swam in a lot more kind of colder kind of lakes over a prolonged period of time. And, I did. And, for me, I think the importance that, again, one of the key points I want to get across is understanding your why. My why when I went back to Coniston was, of course, to succeed, because I'm an A-type person. I always want to succeed at what we do. But my why was very different. One of the women that I swam with in that first year, a woman called Holly Mitchell, unfortunately lost her life to alcoholism in her early 30s, and I wanted to do that swim to remember Holly. And I was very fortunate that I was able to get her sister to swim in her place, because it was an event that she should have been doing. So when I did that swim, Holly was very much in my heart and my mind. And, both myself and her sister Anna got to the end. But from that has become a really strong relationship with her mum. So, big shout out to Sheila Mitchell. She's called Granny Sheila on Instagram. And she's going back to take on London Marathon for the NSPCC this year. And I've said to her, right, Sheila, I will help you, but you don't need to run as much. You need to be doing strength training. And again, one of the points that I want to, get across in that is the utter importance for women to strength train. It isn't a nice to have within your training cycle. It's not just a thing for winter. It is doing something 12 months a year, because women in their 30s start to lose muscle mass, and as a woman in my 50s, I'm losing between 5 to 8% of lean muscle mass every decade. So if I want to carry on doing the things that I do, such as my 50k ultra that I did this year, my Ullswater and everything, having that strength training is so critical. And I think that the way that it's really important, and I love your views on it, is women aren't small men. So don't try and coach somebody in the same way. Women should be doing strength training. You should be lifting heavy. You should be taking on board, significant amounts of, protein. You should be looking at creatine. You should be kind of looking at collagen. I don't know. What are your views on strength training and strength training for women?
Well, yeah, I do exactly the same. Well, pretty much, probably not exactly the same, but similar.
Yeah.
I've just managed. Well, my mum's been talking about going to the gym for quite a while, and she's started coming with me now. So she's 73, and she's
brilliant.
Just got back into it, because she used to be like an instructor actually in the gym. She knows what she's doing, or she should do. But it's been a long time since she's been in there. And I've got her lifting weights a bit and things, but she's a little bit cautious, and I think quite often women are a bit cautious about lifting heavy, or they're worried about, I'm going to get, she always says, I'm going to get really muscly and bulky and things, and she is kind of like, she has got that kind of build, but it's like, no, you're not. It's fine. But she still believes that even now, even though I've told her not. So yeah, it's interesting, that kind of those thoughts that I suppose women have about, or perceptions about, going to the gym. I mean, how with Her Spirit, I expect you had a lot of people that were resistant to going to the gym. How did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one. I'm kind of smiling inside all the points that you made. Is, women think they're suddenly going to become, Arnie by lifting a 2 kilogram kind of dumbbell.
Yeah.
So that is, again, a myth. You are not going to get bulky by doing strength training. So that's a fact. You would have to be doing very specific things and eating, probably a dozen eggs a day with a steak, and everything kind of washed down to, that. So I guess there's that perceived point. Many women don't like to go into the gym because they find it an intimidating environment. And as a swimmer, strength training was always an integral part of what we did and what I've always continued to do. So I don't at all feel intimidated being in that gym, but a significant percentage of women do feel intimidated. So again, it's about saying, if that's how you're feeling, and that if you're listening to this, find somebody. There are many of us's in this world to be able to help. I hope that you will find a friendly kind of gym, I'm going to say gym teacher, because the wonderful Sheila said that she went to her gym and she had a gym teacher. So in essence, a personal trainer that can again help you with the kind of the basics and the basic kind of moves. And for us at Her Spirit, it was kind of breaking it down. So we created a program called Couch to Kilos, and Couch to Kilos was about use your body to start with, because you can do a lot at home. You can do things like press ups and squats and jumps, and we know the importance of doing plyometric work as as we kind of get older. And once you have that competence that you can go through a movement pattern and it doesn't hurt, you can kind of get better, you can then do what you do. Then what we were seeing is women go, well, okay, well, I now want to go into the gym because I'm stronger than I thought I was. It wasn't as hard as I thought I was. And I've learned the technique of being able to do some of the moves that, we just spoke about. And I think the constant thread of this conversation is, again, from a female point of view, that competence piece and the importance of people like us is in this world that then, say you can do it, you're far more than capable, because when you're more confident, you become more competent. When you're more competent, you want to change the way that you, think, act and are. So, yeah, look, it's still a problem. So many people that will still say to me, "Oh, well, I'm going to bulk up, aren't I?" And I went, "No, you're not. No." And that's why, I'm passionate about saying those statistics. Women in their 50s, 5 to 8% of lean muscle mass you're losing in that decade. You've lost muscle mass in your 30s. You've lost muscle mass in your 40s. And we worked with a wonderful gentleman guy called Professor Greg White. And he obviously helped Sarah Cox being able to, do her amazing challenge a couple of weeks ago. But the thing that, again, is important for strength is about strength for life. As we age and we start to look at a road of needing support at home, it's ordinarily because we can't get off the toilet seat and we can't get out of the bed or off the chair. And you need, obviously, that help to then be able to do that. What's the squat? A squat is getting off the chair, right? It's getting off the toilet. And so if you do all those, just think that all the squats that you do are about, protecting yourself for kind of future and being able to, to do those things. So you can still live at home and you can still be able to, do the things that they're used to. So, yeah, every woman listening to this, strength training all
get
the way.
in the gym. And I think it's that feeling like you belong in that place. I think that's, I have felt, not confident in the gym at times, but then I've just given myself a talking to and gone, look, you've got every right to be here just as much as all those they're usually young guys. I'm laughing because I wanted to say we were at the climbing wall the other day. My son is like 16-year-olds, and boy, he's like in the corner with his top off, like doing all this stuff. And I went over and I said, "Oh, look," and I looked around. I said, "It's testosterone corner." He's like gravitated there. But it's like, you can, I don't care. I'll go in there and kind of like get in amongst it because I'm okay in that area, and they don't care anyway. They don't know what they're doing, half of them either. So if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you probably know a bit more than a lot of people in the gym, because I always used to think everyone else knew more than me. And you see some right sites of people doing exercises that are, you think they might know what they're doing, and they're not necessarily. So it's okay to go in there and just, like you say, you're building up some confidence at home doing the moves, so that when you go in there, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. I can go over into that space. I have got the ability and the right to be in that space, it's okay.
Yeah, and it's about like micro habits, because people say, I don't have time. And I'm sure you hear that time and time again is, we only have 24 hours and 7 days a week. It's how you choose to obviously use that time accordingly. And if you bring it back into that strength piece, is if you were to add up the amount of time that you take boiling the kettle, preparing some food, or brushing your teeth, I'd probably reckon that in a day that will be between 15 and 20 minutes that it takes you to perform those tasks. And ordinarily, what are you doing? You're scrolling, or you're kind of. So why don't you? If you're a woman and you're kind of starting, and look, it's about everybody. Just because you've done your first Ironman doesn't mean that you shouldn't do strength training. You should. So as the kettle boils, and you need to, let's say it takes 5 minutes to make your tea. Why don't you do 5 minutes of squats? Why don't you do a few things? Because if you then are doing 20 minutes of strength training every day, you add that up times 7. Hey, that's it's 140 minutes worth of, that's 2 hours of strength training a week without having to go to the gym or having to kind of, to pencil it into there. And then when you realize that actually it was good and it was kind of easy to then be able to do, you prioritize it. So you then say, I am going to do that. And, I'm a firm believer again around strength training as a warm-up. So as I've got back into running, I'll probably do a 20-minute strength session, which will warm me up, which will get me mobilized, that will do everything, and then I'll go out and run. And people are like, well, isn't it the other way around? And it's like, no, because you're warmed up, you're mobilized, and you're not doing 1 rep maxes unless you have a very specific kind of reason. And then I've done in an hour what ordinarily, I didn't. But yeah, it's
and it's helping to prep your body, definitely, like get it warmed up properly. I mean, I see that a lot in my husband and I climb a lot now, and we go there and we do our warm up, and everyone's like, "Oh, you do a really long warm up," and we're like, "Yeah," because otherwise we're going to injure ourselves. And but yeah, a lot of people don't. They just jump straight in and don't prep themselves properly.
And they wonder why they get injured so quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It is really important. So I think I've sort of veered off. I don't think I've asked you any of my questions, but I think we've covered a lot of stuff in here. But I did want to ask you about if there was an example of when you saw someone kind of transform, not just in performance in their sport, but in their confidence or identity in her spirit. Is there anyone there's probably lots of examples, but is there anyone in particular that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots, but I'm going to use an example of a wonderful woman. So the woman in question is called Rachel Tanner, and Rachel Tanner came to her spirit. We got to know her through an early conversation with the work that she did. So she is the Director of Adult Social Care at Bolton Council. And, she had historically played sport probably in her 20s and enjoyed predominantly football and loved it. Life had come along. She'd had 2 kids, a very stressful job had taken, and she wasn't prioritizing herself. And that started to change. So she then started to, think, oh, actually, I can do the things. I think off the back of swimming Coniston, she had then said, right, I'm going to go and swim Lake Windermere. And, she was going from 5 and a bit miles to 11. So you're kind of doubling it plus. But she was struggling, and she said, I don't really kind of know what to do. And she reached out to me within her spirit and said, look, will you help me? And I said, yeah, 100%. I'm happy to coach you. I'd obviously come off the back of all the learnings that I've had from swimming kind of Lake Windermere. And she did it. and she was very meticulous in the way that she trained. She, the key thing was, and the big change is, she prioritized herself. She put herself forward and hadn't put herself, front and center for probably 20 years. She then went and, did and swam Lake Windermere. She, did the other one. She went from Ambleside down to kind of Felfoot. And if you ever spend any time down at Felfoot, there's a big wooden pontoon, which, you kind of smack on, and that's where you got to the end. And she's like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. She then the following year went on to do Bolton 70.3, and again helped her through that kind of journey. She would be, people would say to her, my God, Rach, you look really different, and you look, vibrant, the way that her, she, looked and she sounded. And again, she continued to prioritize herself. And this year she went on to do the Outlaw, and, she also ran the London Marathon. And from a woman that probably 3 years ago was doing couch to 5K can now say, I've achieved the length of Windermere, I've done a half and a full distance race. And I know that she, with a few others, has signed up to do a great event called Chase the Sun. This year, the South, so it's the Isle of Sheppey over to the other side of the country, in an event that I've done in the past before. And look, Rachel is one of so many women through her Spirit journey that have gone on to achieve things that they never thought possible, and that's a wonderful thing to witness.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that making time for yourself is key and can get really lost when you do have children. I mean, I started triathlon when I'd had just after I had children, because I was like, I need something, and it was like to get me out of the, because I could probably have quite easily not prioritize myself, and I don't prioritize myself quite as much now as I did when I was training for my big events. It's like, oh well, I'll do them, and I kind of let everybody else do their thing, especially last year when my husband was doing Ironman. So I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter for me, I'll support everybody else. But it is important to have that support for you as well, because it's really nice as well for the family, I think, for the people around you to be able to support you. Most people actually want to, and it's a good thing for them to do, and to give like a gift for you as well. So
yeah, definitely. And that gift of self is so important. And we've had a common thread through this conversation, and I will always say that you are far more competent, than capable than you think you are. And the framing of that is, always say your mind is your biggest inhibitor or your biggest enabler. Let it be the latter, not the first. And you find a way, and you break it down into bite-sized chunks. I think if I look at my journey, so I'm a couple of days away from 2 years, post a total hip replacement. And for, especially the last year was in, I suffered with chronic pain, and people that have had chronic pain will understand it's just constant, there. And then, bring it kind of forward is that, those first couple of months you're learning to walk again, and because of the severity of the operation. And this year I did a 50k ultra. I was walking it, I was running it, I completely shredded my feet because I didn't do enough training, and I was training more in the water than I was training in the land, so I only have myself to blame. But you
did it.
It's again, back to the things that we've just spoken about a lot. Is it's about, I know this. Your body will give up before your mind kind of does, and my finger wags to you to make sure that you prioritize yourself to continue to do the things that you do, and not let your husband take the limelight.
No, he won't. I don't think so. He's not doing Ironman this year. It was a one-off, but it's finding my own goals now. I need to sort of figure that out, because I haven't really done it, and it's just difficult because I've changed sport as well. So because my son does the same sport, I'm like, oh, we'll do what let's focus on your projects or whatever. And then it's not in the same place as where I want to do something. So it's difficult. We'll figure it out though. We will.
Good.
And I'm still in, it's nice actually, because I got so much. I want to give back a bit as well, because I can see that it was all about my training for quite a while.
And you can become very obsessed by that, can't you? Because you're obsessed that the training you need to do, you're obsessed that you don't want to get sick, you're obsessed that you don't want to. But I think it's really important that during that time of focus, you stay present, you stay connected, and you stay aware, because if you have that level of self-awareness, you will be much better, because you'll get more support, or you'll get a better kind of understanding of kind of where you are. And look, we all do it, and it's very easy for me to then be able to say, I know that I'm definitely get into kind of that place. But like both of us, we've been able to do things that not huge amounts of people have been able to do, because you have that ability to focus, and being selfish is okay.
It is. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions. So one of them is, what one thing that you believe female communities need more of? We kind of talked quite a bit about this, but maybe like community, because there aren't that many.
There aren't enough, and as you know, we had to close down Her Spirit a couple of months ago, because it wasn't getting the funding that it should have done. We know that it works. We know that we've seen huge amounts of success stories, but unless it's government funded and or funded by others, then we weren't able to continue to do what we need to do. But the essence of what we had is togetherness. So I think the important thing is about responsibility. What I saw in Her Spirit and the times that I've coached in triathlon clubs is 2 or 3 people do too much, and not enough people do enough. So again, it's that female community of then being supportive, being kind of helpful, and being proud and passionate of what you do. So we need more female communities. I would love to challenge British Triathlon to have a female strategy. I categorically know, unless somebody tells me the other way, that British Triathlon do not have a female strategy. They should. No national governing body in this country, I think, has a female strategy, and it should. And it should fund clubs, and it should fund people like us, because until we get 50% of funding, whether or not that's health all the way through to kind of elite sport, we won't as a gender be able to achieve the things that we need to. So, is a shout out to Ruth Daniels. Hey, what about giving 50% of funding to women and supporting us along that kind of journey? So yes, but women support women, and that's our superpower at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm involved with a 10 Iron Women community, and they've set up a group, and it's just a group of friends that set it up, so it's all voluntary. They don't get paid or anything for it, so
but they should do.
They should to get to involve. They're involving other women in it. I write the coaching plans and go to their events sometimes in Bristol. But they're not getting, I don't think they're getting paid to do it. It's just something they were passionate about and started up. And like you say, there should be some kind of funding to encourage that, because we can see the benefits. You've shown the benefits.
And the small things, people like you and I, from a coaching point of view, well, what about if you paid us to then be able to run a few sessions? Because, I've seen, some of the times where triathlon clubs, with all the best intention, have gone and done open days, and people just bob up and down and people run rounds. But, people want that support and help. So if every, club, could have, or organisation or community or group that again had a you of this world, that we're not going to get rich quick, are we, on coaching money? But I think the amount of money that we invest in ourselves to do those kind of coaching courses and do all the things, then why wouldn't and shouldn't we be rewarded to be able to to do the job that we do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Good way to sort of finish things up. But I'll just talk a little bit. I know we talked about your projects at the beginning, but how do you help to, because we've not got long left, we'll just quickly wrap up. How do you hope to help women specifically with your new project, and how can people find out about it? Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, Women's Sports Store is about creating a platform that women can go across the verticals of swimming, cycling, running, and nutrition and strength training. We've recently signed a partnership with Dr. Stacey Sims. So if you want a little bit of education, then go and do a Stacey Sims micro kind of learning course. That's what they were set up for. Anybody that wants to know a little bit more about, because the education piece is a really important one. What do we want to achieve? We want to achieve and we want to enable any woman and every woman to know that they're never going to be stopped doing the activity and sport that they love because they can't find the product. Within the site, there's obviously a connection to a Strava group. So if you don't want to go to site, just go and find us on Strava, a women's sports store. And we have a community kind of forum. Is look, we need to collaborate. And, the points that I made when, I talked about closing down Her Spirit was, we don't collaborate. We talk a good game around collaboration, but we don't really collaborate. So look, come and find us. And we want to get to the point where women are buying from women. So we're showcasing great female founders, whether or not it's Lara, the female founder and head chef at Velo Forte. Go buy from Velo Forte, because, Lara's vision to make that kind of work and help us get to the point where we can drive enough commercial revenue to fund women. So we can fund coaches and we can fund projects and we can give back into there. So, please go to womenssportsstore.com. Lots of S's. And then again,
I'll put the links in as well. So.
And look, my passion hasn't changed in any way, shape or form, but the harsh reality is that we have to be more commercial going forward, and we're not going to shy away from that commerciality, but we're going to give women what they want, what they need to continue to swim in that wonderful lake behind you, in kind of Wales, or go and do their first Ironman. And the one, I guess, strap line that we had from Her Spirit that we definitely live life on a daily is together we've got this. Because actually, if we can do it together, then it makes it a lot more social and a lot more fun.
Yeah, and it's just a better way of doing things. You learn and grow a lot faster, don't you, when you've got other people around you that are supporting you, for sure. Oh, well, thank you so much, Mel. It's been really lovely to speak to you, and you've given a lot of insights and a lot of motivation to many women. So thank you for your time, and I'll put all your links in the description, and hopefully people can check you out at the new sports store.
Brilliant. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the offer, and thank you for reaching out to me at a time when, it has been kind of hugely challenging. It's definitely been a time where we've seen who has stepped up to want to be able to kind of support. So a big thank you, Celia, for reaching out, and hopefully we can change the world together for women.
Yay. I love that mission. I feel awesome. Oh, thank you, Mel. Cheers. Thanks for listening today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.